Well, good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Oh, come on. I know it's the end of Comic-Con, but really? It's just, what, 7 months before the next one? All right. Well, I'm Steve Snyder. I'm the president and CEO of the Fleet Science Center. We're excited to be sponsoring this, hosting this panel today. This is the third of three, because it'd be weird if it was the third of 8 panels we've done, one each day. First was the science of the Fast and Furious. All right. Second one was the science of Star Wars. Get a little more sciencey. And then today, we'll get even more sciencey. So, how many of you all been to any of those other panels? Awesome. How many have been to all 3? Even more awesome. This is the woman you need to thank, Melissa. Multifaceted scientist and science communicator extraordinaire who put all these together. We at the Fleet Science Center, we're a county-wide organization really dedicated to creating a San Diego where everyone's connected to the power of science. We want to get people jazzed, excited, and thrilled about science as much as we are. And we did a number of ways, including our facility in Balboa Park, which is a science center, which if you haven't been to, what are you waiting for? Comic-Con is just about over. You've got plenty of time before you get to the plane or the bus or the train or the car. And if you're just in San Diego and you're on your way home, Balboa Park, you have to pass by it. So stop by. Anyway, in addition to that, obviously we do any kind of programs we can all across San Diego County, trying to connect people to the power of science. And nothing does it more than ways that people get inspired by that. Inspired to pursue a career or even just an interest in science or engineering. So for some, way back when, it was Mr. Wizard. For me, it was the first time I saw Spock walk onto the bridge. Right? For others, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. And for a whole host of engineers, young and old, it was this little show on basic cable called Mythbusters. Right? Inspired untold people to think in science and engineering in new ways. And oddly enough, about 2 years before Mythbusters premiered, I was working in another museum, and we were in a consortium museum trying to come up with new exhibits that would be really exciting to do. And one of them we thought is, oh, wouldn't it be cool? We could do an exhibit on urban legends. No, make that urban myths. And what we could do is we can do an exhibit and we can talk about them and talk about whether they're real or they weren't real. And we all sat around and said, nah, that'd never work. Oh man, were we wrong. Luckily though, some years later, we got to host the Mythbusters exhibition at the Fleet Science Center, which was awesome. And even more awesome was the fact that we got to meet Kari, Tori, and Grant. When they came in for both the opening, they came and did an event for us. We did a podcast together, so I got to interview them a couple times. They did a great session here at Comic-Con a few years ago, which was really a thrill for us and just extraordinarily exciting. Because anytime we can connect with people who have that same passion for getting people connected to science and engineering, it's a big win. And it's hard to think of folks today, there's a handful of names that you can toss around today of folks who really have touched so many people and gotten so many people on this kind of a pathway. And so that's why it was really excited for us to be involved in this panel today. So I just want to thank you all for coming here. Hope to see you again at the Fleet Science Center or other events or like this one. And let me now turn it over to Melissa and you can get the panel started. So thank you all.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to sit here for this panel. So like he said, I'm a volunteer at the Fleet Science Center. I'm also a science communicator and a writer. I held a tribute panel last year after Grant's passing that was virtual. It attracted the attention of Don Bees from ILM, who then got in touch with Nelson Hall and Adam Savage, who had all worked with Grant at ILM. And that's a great virtual panel. The QR code here at the bottom is the link to that if you wanted to check it out at some point. I also wrote an article interviewing a whole bunch of the ILM team that had worked with Grant. It's in the current issue of Star Wars Insider magazine, and it's just got some great behind the scenes, at ILM, at the ranch stories, and also served as sort of a memorial tribute. So that's me. Really quickly, before we bring out Fawn, I want to invite Lindsay Seapock up here of the 501st.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Seepak, a member of the 501st and a fan organization dedicated to Star Wars costuming and charity. 10 years ago, Grant Imahara was inducted into the 501st as an honorary member, which is held for those who have contributed in a special way to the Star Wars universe. There is no denying that Grant did that and so much more. Grant's passion for science fiction, Star Wars, and STEM is evident in all the things he accomplished. It was always clear that he loved these things in the same way that we all did, first and foremost as a fan. I think that is why his work, his life, has touched so many of us, even if we didn't get to know him personally. He was one of us. He had a deep love of fandom, and Star Wars in particular, and always found a way to express that in unique and amazing ways. We are all just so lucky that he shared it with all of us. We at the 501st never forget our fallen members, and I am so thankful that Grant's legacy will live on in the Grant Imahara STEM Foundation so that others will have the chance to learn and grow and join us in a galaxy far, far away. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and the members of the 501st. I really appreciate that. So next we'll bring out our panelist, Fawn Davis, who worked at ILM for many years and is a lifelong friend of Grant. Fawn? So we're basically just here to hear great stories, Fawn. If you want to start, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first met Grant.
I've been in the film industry for 30 years plus, alongside with Grant. We actually started on the same week on the same project at ILM. We were building a miniature of the Global Olympic Village so they could put it in commercials, because the real Global Olympic Village wasn't done yet. And Grant and I, we had similar skill sets. He went to engineering school. I went to the School of Radio Shack Electronics. Anyway, so our first job there was to wire hundreds of lights inside the, oh yeah, there's a picture of it. We had hundreds of lights in this miniature that we had to wire, all from underneath this table that was about maybe as tall as this table, like 3 feet tall. And so, since we both just started there that week, and we were underneath this table just wiring hundreds of lights, we got a real good opportunity to get to know each other. So, we traded notes, like where'd you go to school, tell me about your family, where'd you grow up, all that kind of stuff, and we were friends ever since. So that's where I met Grant, and that's where, we basically worked at ILM. We thought we were going to retire there. We loved it there so much. We had a lot of fun. Of course, that's where we worked on the Star Wars movies and all that.
Yeah, I remember learning for the article just how many things ILM was involved with that I didn't realize. I think of it as Star Wars, and we've got pictures here of all sorts of other projects that you worked on. I mean, the Energizer Bunny, it sounded like commercials was a huge percentage of the work that was done.
Yeah, there was a whole division of ILM that was dedicated to commercials. And since Grant and I were new at the company, there was like the features work, and then there was the commercials work, and if you were new, you had to pay your dues doing a lot of the commercials work before you could get onto the features. So we did a lot of commercials together. A lot of great features too, of course.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot worse people to be stuck under a 3-foot tall table with, maybe for, although it seems like the culture at ILM was pretty good, based on the interview that we did last year.
Yeah, it was very much like a family. We spent a lot of time together. Many, many long days, a lot of overtime in this industry, so.
So what were some of the other projects during that time? I guess maybe placing it in the year would help. What year did you start at ILM?
Oh, that was, sorry, this is a long time ago. It was 97?
Okay. So right as...
No, I'm sorry, it was 96, 1996.
Okay. So some work on the special editions then and all of that, but before you got to that, you had to work on some of these other projects.
Oh yeah. We worked on Deep Impact together and Galaxy Quest. This photo is from Jurassic Park Lost World. We worked on Jurassic Park 2 and 3. The Terminator 3 we had worked on. We jumped out of ILM for the Matrix Revolutions and Reloaded miniatures unit. A Lots of movies. At the time, ILM did 76% of the visual effects work in the entire world. So we really, so we got to work on all the big blockbuster movies.
Yeah, this one here, was this for Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, Pearl Harbor. We built, that's a 36-foot long miniature battleship. And we had different dressing for all the different decks on the ship, so we could change it to be the Arizona, the California, a bunch of different ships.
Okay. And it sounded like it really affected you. I remember you telling me you got into big band music.
Oh, yeah.
You'd listen to that while...
One of the things that we really enjoyed doing, both Grant and I, was, and a lot of people at ILM actually, is we would immerse ourselves in whatever subject matter it is that we would be working in. It's one of the great blessings of working in the film industry is you're kind of just plopped in the middle of all these different genres of history or science fiction or fantasy. And then, when we were working on Pearl Harbor, we really got into 1940s history. We started listening to the big band music and Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters and all that kind of stuff. We even went to some 1940s tribute things on the battleship the USS Hornet that they had in Alameda. They had a live big band and all that kind of stuff, but that's the kind of stuff we would do. So yeah, Pearl Harbor was a really good one because there was so much that happened in that time period in history.
Right. And this is from the park, is that right?
This was Tony Turbo. We did this job with Chevron and the ballpark. So this car would drive around the ballpark at the beginning of baseball games, and we made it. And it had eyes that moved back and forth, and you could drive it. It was really fun when the executives from Chevron came to see it because there was all these very serious big guys in suits, and they had to get in this car with their knees up and drive it around. We had a lot of fun on that one.
That's great.
Look how young we are there.
I know.
Like teenagers.
Yeah, every time I see, these great pictures and hearing about what fun it was, but it was also a lot of work. It sounds like, extra hours and all of that, but something that Grant was really made for in terms of that work ethic.
Yeah, somehow he had also the magical skill of not ever getting hungry.
Oh.
That was a conversation many a nights between Grant and I. I'd always start pushing to order food around 7, and he'd be like, "No, I'm fine."
And then, of course, there was Star Wars, the prequels that you worked on. We've got lots of pictures of Grant, looking like a giant on these sets. Tell us about what it was like being a Star Wars fan and then growing up and then getting to work on Star Wars films.
Yeah, we all grew up on, Grant and I were only a couple months apart. He was about 3 months younger than me, so I used to joke he's my younger brother. My younger, more accomplished brother. We shared that in common. Of course, we both saw the original Star Wars New Hope in 1977 at age 7, around there.
Perfect time.
Yeah, and then that, of course, is the perfect age to see a movie like that and just get completely hooked. So we grew up with those movies, and then when we got to ILM, at that time in the 90s, Star Wars was done. After Return of the Jedi, all the merchandise stopped selling. They just kind of shelved all of it and never thought they'd come back to it. And then I think Gloop Toys came out with the Star Wars Micro Machines. Just on a fluke, someone there was a Star Wars fan and thought it was time. And that product took off in such a way that they decided to do more product licensing, and that's when George Lucas decided to do the Star Wars Special Editions. And of course, Grant and I were very, very excited that we get an opportunity to work on those movies, which was also interesting because it was actually the very same movies that we grew up on because we were doing the special editions. So that was a pretty surreal experience. It was almost like time travel.
Yeah, for the special editions, did you get to be on set for any of the additional scenes or anything like that?
Oh yeah. We set up the Wampa Cave.
Okay.
We did a bunch of extra Wampa Cave stuff, and then of course we did the Jedi Rocks musical sequence. So we built part of Jabba's palace, and yeah, there was a ton of stuff. A lot of miniatures too.
That's wild. Yeah, that's definitely a whole different experience from working on the prequels, where it's a new world you're creating.
Yeah, we got to pull a lot of stuff out of archives and restore it and get it all up to working condition. So that was also pretty unique to actually be handling the original props and all that.
Right. But it was frowned upon at ILM to be a Star Wars fan. You had to kind of keep it under the radar, is that right?
Yeah, there were a group of us, Don B's included, Grant and I, and a number of us who were Star Wars fans, but we wouldn't really flaunt that around the studio because they were so focused on the work, and they had some unfortunate experience with fans maybe losing their composure around George Lucas, so they got really wary of it. So we had our own little, we would just go to lunch and talk about it and then just not talk about it at work.
That's great.
That eventually went away as, like, you know, our secret identities were revealed, and it was revealed that we were not going to lose our composure around George Lucas, so.
I guess that answered my follow-up question was, did you ever lose your composure around George?
No. I don't know how anyone could. He's so low-key.
Okay.
He's a very quiet guy.
So yeah, some of these pictures from the model builds, I really just love seeing the scale of it. These are, do you have a most memorable set that you liked working on, or?
Oh man, you know, it's really hard to pick those kinds of favorites or standouts because there were so many. And each one posed its own challenges and had its own payoffs, you know. I will say the harder the miniature was to create, the more satisfying it was when you finally did.
And it seemed like Grant just sort of had an eye for this. I remember someone else mentioning that in the interview we did, where he would just come in and light some tiny little sconce that really gave it scale or something like that. It seems like a job he was sort of born to do. I think it's right that he got into the field, you know, his field and stuff like that. Star Wars, sort of wanting to get into robotics because of Star Wars.
Yeah, he studied electronic engineering at USC, and then from there he actually was about to drop out of school. He was really discouraged with how unsatisfying, how boring it was for him, and that's one of the reasons why when we created a foundation, it was important to do a STEAM foundation rather than STEM education, because he really didn't find his path until he started working at Lucasfilm. He got an internship with Skywalker Sound, and he worked for them for a number of years, and then the archives were also located on the same, at Skywalker Ranch with Skywalker Sound. He met Don B's there. And then there was an occasion where they needed one of the R2s, one of the R2D2s at the archives repaired and kind of renovated. And yeah, there's a picture of it. And so they knew that Grant had a formal electronics engineering degree, so they asked him if he can come over and work on that. And that was his first venture into the field that he's, you know, really, yeah. That was on the, I think that was right before the prequels. We actually pulled every single R2 unit out of the archives, and he fixed them all up. Well, there was a whole team, of course, but he did a lot of the heavy lifting on the electronics side. He was the only one there, besides John Foreman was another electronic engineer there, but it was basically just those two guys. The rest of us that did stuff, it was just wiring. It wasn't an understanding of the actual circuit boards and things like that. He would actually design circuit boards and have those pressed, and so we had servo controllers and a lot of really unique lighting kits and stuff that he would build.
How many different R2D2s does one need?
I think we had 18.
Oh my god.
Somewhere around there. There is a picture somewhere of all of them. I've seen. I can't remember. It's been a little while.
So, but then this turned into the R2 Builders Club, is that right?
Yeah. So a number of us were working on R2D2s at ILM, including Grant and I, and Don B's and Adam Savage. About 10 of us decided we had to have an R2D2. And of course, we couldn't make castings or copies or anything off of the ones at Lucasfilm, so we had to make everything from scratch. And I will say it was one of the dumbest projects we ever started. It was a ton of work, and so we used to get together on weekends and evenings, and of course, because we only spent evenings and weekends on these, we underestimated what that really meant. We ended up completing our R2s just about a year and a half ago. It was only 20 years, but we finally did it. We there were times that we all would go on different features after ILM, and we wouldn't see each other for quite a while. And then when I moved down to LA and Grant moved down to LA, this is Billy Brooks. He did the CG R2 for the Star Wars movies. So he also joined the group because you fall in love with these characters when you're a kid, and then you work at ILM and you make an R2-D2 there. It only takes about a month or two to build, and you think, oh, we could do that.
20 years later.
Yeah.
Adam bragged that he was the first one to finish his, and that was still even 5 years.
Yeah, when he went on hiatus from Mythbusters for a month, and he said he approached it like a job. He would work on his R2 40 hours a week for 4 weeks, and then he finished it. Which, of course, made the rest of us really disgruntled and disappointed at how many hours he had to spend finishing it.
Yeah, R2-D2 is my favorite character, but you've talked me out of ever wanting to own my own. But then there was another droid that was a big part of Grant's career.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things that was pretty fun about working at Skywalker Ranch for Grant is he got to do appearances as C-3PO. So Anthony Daniels, of course, is not going to go out and do car commercials or DVD release appearances and things like that. So they needed someone who could get in the suit and be C-3PO. And they one day someone looked at Grant and said, "Huh, you look like you'd fit in this costume." And so they tried it on. And yeah, the rest is history. He got to play C-3PO in a lot of different things. That was Oprah Winfrey, and yeah, they flew to Japan and did some car commercials and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I think Don said at some point he shaved about 3/4 of an inch off of the legs, and then it fit Grant perfectly. But other than that, it was ready to go.
Yeah. And then you could always tell when he was getting ready to do an appearance in a few weeks. They would notify him, and you'd see he would drink these. Like breakfast drinks at his desk instead of having lunch.
Right.
To make sure he could fit in the suit.
Yeah, I think Mel
There's always
was
this
the
severe
grumpy,
diet.
slim fast diet.
Yeah.
Knew Grant was going to do an appearance. And you had a chance too at some point, is that right?
Yes. Well, yeah. Actually, I didn't fit because my butt was too big. I was gonna say it. But the rest of the suit fit on me at the time. And then I put on the shorts, and I was really, really trying to get them on. And they're like, "No, you gotta break it." I'm like, I can't do this. Didn't end up fitting.
But it actually culminated with Grant ending up on screen as C-3PO, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Episode 2, I believe?
Yeah, there was a few times where they couldn't get Anthony Daniels in time to, we shot a lot of the pickup shots and things like that right there in Marin. So there were times when they just needed someone to jump in the suit and be C-3PO, so.
Yeah. I remember Nelson, the virtual panel we did last year, Nelson said he could tell exactly what scenes it was. He could tell that was Grant as C-3PO and not Anthony Daniels, but I admit that I can't tell them apart, which means he did a great job. So, there was also time for other projects at ILM?
Yes. So Grant and I, we went to see Battlebots. It was a small, no, actually it was called Robot Wars. We went to see Robot Wars at Fort Mason in San Francisco. It was just a very small competition, maybe about 24 robots at the time. And we had a blast watching this and decided that we had to build our own robots and compete. So we competed in Robot Wars, which later morphed into Battlebots, which later then became a TV series on Comedy Central. And then now it was on ABC for a while, and it's now on Discovery Channel, so it's still around. But we used to spend our evenings and weekends neglecting our R2-D2s and building these Battlebots.
So you could get away with that using the ILM shop and tools and all that?
Yeah, they actually were really, really cool. They wanted to, there's always a risk that you're going to lose the talent that you've hired at a company when you're laying people off between projects. So if they encouraged you to stick around and work on personal projects between jobs, then you wouldn't go off somewhere and get a job at a different company. So there's a lot of really fun things that ILM did to, show their appreciation for our work.
Did your bots ever have to go head to head, or?
No, we intentionally chose 2 different weight classes. So his was a middleweight and mine was a lightweight.
Okay.
And then I think mine was about a $5,000 robot, and his got up to about $30,000. It's a very expensive sport. We did have sponsors and stuff though, so that's how we would supplement that.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, we got a couple other pictures here. Dead Blow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that one there is, he's got the steel hammer. That's one of the earlier iterations of the robot. And then you could see this evolution happen over time. You would go to an event, you would compete, and you would find out what's wrong with your robot when you lost a match. And so you would just keep refining and you would actually build a new robot for every season.
Wow.
So for a while it was really a lot of work because we would compete every 6 months. And that's about how much time it takes to build one of these robots. So it was pretty much all year round we would be building these things. And the steel hammer later turned into a titanium hammer, which later turned into a magnesium hammer, as he slowly refined and perfected his killing strategy. And it paid off. He has 3 of the giant nuts, which are the trophies that you win for the show there.
Yeah, on the recent video you did with Adam Savage where he came by the shop and you talked about it, it seemed like Grant took this very seriously. Your styles, were they different?
Yeah, I think I was always just a little more loose and wild. For me, Battlebots was just about having fun and putting on a good show. And Grant would do that too, but he really, really wanted to win. For me, I just wanted to destroy things or get destroyed in some spectacular way. That was enough.
That's great. So it sounds also like ILM encouraged a lot of social events. There were Halloween parties that got taken quite seriously.
Yeah, this is kind of the lead up to later Grant Imahara, a lot of you know, because Halloween was like our favorite holiday. Any excuse to get into a costume. So he was the electric, he was part of Don B's and Nelson Hall. They did the Disney Electric Light Parade. So he's one of the floats there. And the whole thing lit up, it was crazy, he played music. Of course, Grant was instrumental in all the electronics for that. But yeah, so every year they would have this really crazy Halloween party, and the prizes were really, really big, like an SGI workstation, which was just an unattainable computer graphics workstation at the time. Now they're like paperweights. And then also like trips to Hawaii, just like really, really big prizes. So the costumes were inevitably, created by all these ILM artists, were really, really over the top and a lot of fun.
And then that also spun off into the superhero parties?
Yeah, so one of the model shop employees had a warehouse space in San Francisco. Here we are, 14 again. So he would do a superhero party once or twice a year, and you'd get to make up a superhero and dress as that superhero, and then we'd go to the party, and then you had to do a presentation. This is us doing our presentation of what your superhero is and what our magical powers are, or superhero powers are. And so these actually we came up with the night before the party. We were just like working late at ILM, and we had access to the laser cutter, so we cut those yin and yang symbols. Each of us had one half of the symbol as a shield, and then we were just sitting there going, well, what are we going to do for this party? He goes, do you want to go to that party tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, I want to go, but I don't have a costume. He goes, I don't either. And I said, maybe we should do a group thing. And we laughed, we looked at each other, and said, maybe we should do yin and yang. So we're both Asian. And then so we decided to go to Chinatown the next day, and we bought the kung fu outfits, a bunch of chopsticks, rice spatula. We were just like, what's cheap, you know? And I had those hats already, and sandals. And so we were yin and yang, and we had the chops. We made a bandolier for the chopsticks. That was Chopsticks of Fury. And that was the rice spatula of doom. Had a little Velcro thing we could hold it out. And then we would just hold the shield together and scream like we were electrified or something like that. And we actually won the trophy. That was best costume.
Did everyone know that you had only started the night before and yet still managed to win?
Yeah. There was a lot of resentment. But we would do that quite a bit. I think part of that was just when you were at ILM, it attracted the best, most creative and intelligent people. And so we would, very, very often on set, they'd already be shooting and say, we need this thing. And so you would have to find a very, very quick way to do something that looked motion picture quality for camera.
Right.
It might fall apart once it left stage that day, but it had to be done quickly.
And I believe this was from another ILM party or an event, maybe?
Oh, this might have been, this was after. So one of the things that Grant really got into was once he got onto Mythbusters and he started doing conventions, he discovered how much fun people have doing cosplay. So he got really into cosplay himself and did a lot of really great costumes and things like that.
Yeah, we got a lot of great pictures that you shared.
Yeah, there's he and I.
Yeah.
That was at his birthday party.
I think when I met Grant on the floor here once at Comic-Con, might have been this year, he had his VSG gear on. So I know he was embraced by a lot of fandoms because he was, you know, a serious geek just like us.
Well, I think there was a certain coolness about that because, you know, when we were growing up, we would go to conventions and things like that, and you guys all remember the ones in hotel. Well, maybe not all of you. A lot of you probably remember the ones that you would just have at a hotel, and the banquet hall would be the main event space. There might be a gallery in another banquet hall or something, but they were really small, and you go to work on Monday, and you wouldn't really tell people you went to a convention on the weekend because they might just think it's weird. And then it was long before they became so popular, but kind of that momentum and that excitement of cosplay and conventions and pop culture and all of that kind of growing and having, you know, for us it was a really big deal to be adults and still be able to embrace that part of our childhood that we enjoyed so much, and dressing up in costumes and becoming the characters that we know and love. And I always thought it was really cool that he and the other Mythbusters really, well, he and Adam mostly really embraced that and just kind of showed the world that you could be successful, you could be intelligent and thoughtful, and still dress up in a costume on weekends and pretend you're Doctor Who, you know?
Yeah, and I know that Adam always picks costumes that disguise him so he doesn't get mobbed on the convention floor and can get things, but I don't see any of these pictures that suggested Grant did that.
Yeah, Grant was always okay with being approached. He was always very gracious. Actually, all of the Mythbusters were, but Adam was, I would say, exceptionally popular.
Yeah.
And he used to come to Comic-Con long before he was on Mythbusters, every year. And I remember the first year he came, that was the first year he was on the show, and he was kind of mobbed by people everywhere he went. And so the next year he said, I'm not going to do that again, I'm going to dress as Hellboy. And then so he did his Hellboy costume, and he said he was stopped more as Hellboy than he was as Adam Savage. So the next year after that, he came as a stormtrooper. And there were enough of them around that he could have a good time. But yeah, now it's become a whole sport almost to find out what Adam Savage is dressed as when he comes.
That's right.
I remember that day, actually. I had a table here, and every time a stormtrooper would come by, I'd lean over and go, Adam? They just kind of look at me funny, as stormtroopers do.
That's great.
And I found out he never actually stopped by my table, so.
Yeah, I only ever met Grant a few times. I think it was always at Comic-Con or related events, and you know, a couple quick selfies, try not to bother him, you know, 30-second interaction, but obviously made a very big impression on me because of like what you were saying with Mythbusters, making geek, you know, culture cool and accepted as an adult. He obviously had a big effect, you know, everyone here is here today for this. And I'm just curious if you ever talked to him about what it was like after Mythbusters, and being famous and being approached and sort of being this beacon of that.
Yeah, I will say that the conventions became a real like way to occupy his time that he really enjoyed. He would do over maybe 10 or 12 conventions a year, and really enjoyed meeting people and being out with people, and yeah, he's just a very outgoing person. I think it helped him a lot because after Mythbusters, you know, they were on that show for such a long time. There was a period where he was he was trying to figure out what to do next. You know, after such a successful show, it's kind of weird to just be in quiet, I think, for him. So that's where he filled his time with conventions.
And robots.
There was a time when I'd see him, like we always lived in the same city. There were times that I would see him more at conventions than I would at home. For sure.
So yeah, in terms of those other projects, I guess besides Mythbusters, there's the famous Jeff Peterson that he got involved with. He was also on Star Trek Continues, for those that watched. Did you ever talk to him about what this particular project meant?
Oh yeah, I mean he really, I mean, I would say that the character Sulu on Star Trek was very important for young Asian people, and just the idea that someone could be, you know, a significant character on a series and just respected in the way that he was. And of course, knowing George Takei the way we all know him now, he just became more and more respectable and very, just a very genuine, nice guy. And I think that really inspired Grant, and so it meant a lot for him to be able to play that character. And he got really, really into it. If you ever see it, if you haven't seen it, check it out. He does a really, really great Sulu. Like, you can tell he worked hard on it.
That's great. So you mentioned a little bit moving to LA and working together there. He had a shop at Fonco Studios, I know a little bit about. You want to tell us other things that you worked on?
Yeah, basically after Mythbusters was, after the, Tori, Carrie, and Grant were off of Mythbusters, he moved to LA, and then I moved down around the same time, and I opened a production studio in LA, and he rented a space at my studio. This was from White Rabbit Project. We shot the intro where he's doing the laboratory stuff and the volcano, and we did a number of different things for the show at Fonco, because we're all friends, you know. It's great being a part of these communities, you know, and that's one of the things that we really enjoyed, and you know, my studio has always been a part of many communities, the robotics community, and of course the science and education community, and Grant, Grant and I just like to work together.
And then also more recently he was working as a Disney Imagineer. I don't know if anyone's been to the new Avengers campus, but Grant had a big hand in that Spider-Man.
He was on that project for quite a long time. For quite a long time he couldn't talk about it. He would just kind of come and go and hide in his shop, and eventually there was stuff that he could show us, but they started this robot with just a single kind of monopod stick that would curl out and in, and it would do these acrobatics. It was called Stickman. And then from that very humble beginning, they would slowly add components and keep finessing the design. And now when you go see it at the theme park, it's just a incredible robotic animatronic Spider-Man. It does a whole number of different moves, and it looks very human, flying through the air. It's really unbelievable. When you see it on video, it doesn't quite hit you as hard as it does when you see it in person. It's really, really impressive. You can just feel the momentum, and it's flying through the air doing these acrobatics. And it does it repeatedly, several times a day, all day.
Yeah, I've yet to see it, but everyone that tells me about how cool it is, I immediately tell them that Grant was helped out with those robotics, and most people think it's a stunt person doing that multiple times a day, so can't wait to see that. So for setting up your own business at Fonco, what parts of ILM culture did you specifically want to bring with you? Did you not want to bring with you? And how is Grant part of that?
I would say a lot of what we did at Fonco, we really set the space up, modeled after all the greatest things we could find from each company that we worked for. So, part of it is I'm a little older now than I used to be, and I don't like a lot of drama. I just want to work. I want to continue doing amazing things. Grant was the same. So, we set up the space to just be very comfortable. It was a very creative feeling space. We have a lot of artifacts and stuff laying around the building for projects that we had worked on. And Grant's space was especially tidy, and it had almost a sense of showmanship to it, because originally when he was setting up the space, he was pitching to White Rabbit Project that they could shoot in his space. So he went the extra mile and put LED lights behind all the cabinets. Everything's very organized, and then all the bins had labels on them, but they would be things like arc reactor.
Oh yeah, that's straight from Mythbusters, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. So there's like I said, there was influence from all the different places that we had worked at. So, but I always enjoyed the labels on the containers.
Yeah, and he was had some fun side projects here. I know I watched some videos about his child build and also a BB-8.
Yeah, so originally when he saw, it was funny. I was there. We were at Star Wars Celebration, and they had the BB-8 roll out on stage. I think we might have caught that on video. We didn't see it live, but previous to that, we thought all the BB-8s were CG, and there's no way you could actually get a robot to do what the BB-8 does. And then they show a BB-8 roll out on stage with J.J. Abrams, and I remember Grant that day was like, I have to make one. I told him he was crazy because we hadn't finished our R2-D2s yet. But he did. He just locked himself in his shop there, and he just kept iterating on it and perfecting it. And he you know, one day there was a BB-8 rolling around Fonco Studios, you know. And his whole thinking was he would build this BB-8 and do a similar thing to the 501st and some of the Star Wars fan groups and bring it to children's hospitals and things like that. And then he realized it was a rolling bacteria distributor. And the kids would want to hug it, but it's a ball that rolls around on the floor at a hospital. Doesn't sound like a really good idea. So he was always in the back of his mind thinking of what he can put his energy into that might be a replacement for BB-8.
Is that how Grogu came about?
And that's how Grogu came about. So then, of course, we all watched Mandalorian and then saw Grogu, and he's like, I have to make a Grogu. And he did. So that's the animatronic Grogu that he made.
And I think that was from plans. A fan put up 3D printing plans and said, you know, feel free to use these, but you know, donate.
Yeah, he got a computer model from one of the fans that was raising money for charity with the design. And then he, again, many iterations and tests and things like that to arrive at exactly the right kind of silicone and the mechanics and the scale. I remember the scale was a real big debate because, and we were all very, very steadfast in our conclusion. But he had like foam core versions of, you know, just printouts of Grogu in different sizes, and then he printed out a bunch of different sizes. He's got like a whole box of different sizes, just trying to find out what size Grogu is, and then in the end we found out there's 2 different sizes for the show. That's where the debate just really fell apart.
Yeah, if you haven't watched the Adam Savage's video of him coming to the studio, especially the Grogu one, is very charming because he had a little like carrier for it.
Yeah, carries it around in a baby Bjorn.
And so he's got it there, and I mean, it's animatronic, right? It goes through a series of motions.
Yeah, it's got a little chip in it. It's got a whole cycle that it can do, but it's also programmable or controllable in other ways.
And I think you also look at that bin full of parts, which is a little creepy, right? When there's just like heads and eyes.
Yeah, the whole box of body parts.
Yeah, I recommend checking that out.
And his skull.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, we're going to open it up to some audience questions here in a few minutes. If you have any, start thinking of those. I do want to talk a little bit, well, first, I have a picture of another member of Grant's family here.
Dipper, yes.
It was in the BSG photo that I showed a little bit earlier, too.
Yeah, that's Dipper, his cat. Dipper actually lives with us now, my girlfriend and I. She's a wonderful little kitty.
That's right. I remember Dipper joining us on our Zoom call.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she had to see what was going on there.
And Dipper is, I mean, nerd to the core, right? Dipper is another character, is that right? From...
Oh yeah, Dipper Pines. It's named after Dipper Pines from Gravity Falls.
Yeah. So, all the way to the core when you're naming your pets all after these characters. So, well, that's great. I want to talk a little bit about the STEAM Foundation, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. I have some of the younger pictures you shared with me of Grant. I love that Lego right from the beginning.
Yeah, I think for all creatives that end up doing what we do, that's a common thread, is the obsession with Legos as a child.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was a Castle Lego person myself, but before they had all the pop culture tie-ins. So yeah, the Grant Imahara STEAM Foundation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that came about and what the goal is?
After Grant's passing, there was, of course, a tremendous outpouring of sympathy for Grant's mother, Carolyn. And she just realized how much of influence that he had been to so many educational organizations and groups and different communities around the world, and decided to dedicate a foundation to his memory and continue the work that he had been doing in his charitable work. in education and things like that. So she started the Grant Imahara STEAM Foundation. And then she asked a number of us that were friends with him to be on the board of directors. And so we're basically raising money for STEAM education programs. We're teaming up with different organizations to both raise money as well as distribute money to those different STEAM programs. Long term, we'll be launching on some of our own programs, but in the short term, we're going to take advantage of the people who have done the footwork and created incredible STEAM education programs and help fund those programs. So, if you'd like to donate, the GrantImaharaFoundation.org has a link.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a lot of great, ideas for mentorships and scholarships for underserved youth. And if I remember correctly, Grant worked with a robotics club at the Richmond High School when he lived in the Bay Area.
Yeah, so Richmond High School is, the Richmond community in the San Francisco Bay Area is one of the lower income areas, and the schools there would fall under the category of disadvantaged. So he used to mentor the robotics team in Richmond. So he used to go there and actually, that was a really big deal for them. And so that was the first organization that we helped out. We had donated a bunch of gear and funds to that program. So that's the kind of thing that we're hoping to do. But the focus is definitely disadvantaged youth.
Great. So are there any audience questions for Fawn? We've still got 12 more minutes. There's a microphone here in the middle towards the front.
Hi. Did you or Grant ever have any dream projects that you did or dream projects that you have?
Professionally or just?
Both, professionally or just side projects.
I don't know why I asked that, because we had both. I mean, I think we were just in heaven there at ILM because we got to work on all the franchises that we grew up with, So that was a lot of fun. So I feel like all of those were kind of dream projects. And then on the side, I think the R2-D2 was definitely the biggest one. We had worked on for the longest amount of time. And, that was just to see it on the screen, to work with it, and then to have your own, it was like a really big deal. So, cool. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I call it my emotional support robot.
Did Grant have a favorite artifact from his time in ILM?
Oh yeah, it's funny actually. Adam Savage. Okay, so there's this weird history. Like ILM had a practical division which encompassed the model shop at ILM, and they sold off the practical division. It became its own company called Kerner Effects or Fonco Studios, and that company went for a while, and they got wrapped up in some kind of unfortunate, like an investment thing where the companies are bought and then kind of stripped clean and then closed down. And that's what actually sadly happened to that company. And when that happened, they went bankrupt and they auctioned off everything. And Adam Savage went onto the auction and bought these things called blue boxes, which for Grant and Adam and I and a bunch of us that had dealt with the electronics side of the miniatures really coveted these boxes. But they were custom made power supplies that ILM had made. This is like the nerdiest thing ever. But they were blue, anodized aluminum. They were really huge and heavy, but they had a dial on it. You could dial it, 0 to 15 volts or 15 to 30 volts. And it was perfectly clean power. So it didn't vary at all, and it was really good for photography. And so these were extremely valuable custom-made power supplies that ILM had made. And so Adam went on that auction. He bought all of them, and then he gave each one of us one of these blue boxes. So it was Grant and myself and a number of model makers that really worked with those blue boxes a lot. So
I was definitely expecting the answer to be like a cool ship or something like that. But hey, whatever you love.
The blue box was on every show all the way back to I think Empire Strikes Back. So there's a lot of history in that little box.
All right, my question is very basic, considering what you stated, how well you guys kept your composure before, but what was yours and Grant's ultimate geek out moment that you just went completely fan?
Oh boy. Yeah, we would talk about those things at lunch. I think that it was R2D2. You know, we keep going back to that robot because it just meant so much to us. Something about R2 is like the underdog. Something about not knowing what he's actually saying. Just, I don't know. Maybe that's the same thing that people love so much about Boba Fett. It's just like the mystery of it all. But R2 was definitely one of those things. Interestingly, you know, even though we worked on the trilogies, the prequel trilogy, and the special editions, the thing that we would always nerd out about the most were the items from the archives from the original movies. Those always had kind of a more special place for us, and we would kind of nerd out on that stuff. We would look at, like, quietly, we'd get the Star Destroyer from the ranch or something, and we'd just quietly nerd out on all the little details.
Yeah, I remember Don saying he was never more popular than when he was the archivist at the ranch.
That is true.
Because everyone was his friend.
Hi. I was a huge fan of Battlebots, and I was wondering what iterations you went through with your own bot, and if you realized, given unlimited time and money, if there was a superior Battlebot strategy.
Oh boy, you know, it was interesting. The restrictions of building a BattleBot were so tight because of the weight limit. Like, even if you had unlimited funds, and we really did buy by the end of the show, we were buying the best of every component you could buy. But, you know, my robot was still limited to, I think, 75 pounds, and his was limited to, I think it was 250 pounds. So, you know, I think we did end up, like, he ended up with that magnesium hammer with the flipper. That's I think, the newest design right there. And we did refine every year. We kept upgrading. I think that the only place to go with our robots would have been to continue fighting in something like the new series, where all the robots, I think, are in the 500 pound or 450 pound range. And they've brought back flamethrowers, which was a lot of fun. I think, yeah, I don't know. We could go on for, you know, hours, of course, you know, discussing different theories and ideas and ways to improve on the robots in ways that are so nerdy they would bore people to sleep. Because a lot of it had to do with the electronics and response time, and we would get into long discussions about tires. Things, you know. There's a lot that goes into these things.
Hi, I just wanted to come up as a fan, but also kind of an adjacent nerd. I think most of us here are that. But just before Grant's passing, he did a really big gesture for my family. Our dog that we loved. His name is Braveheart, and he was doing really bad. And Grant reached out to us and helped us with his end of life. And it's just really inspirational for all of us in our family to do the same kind of thing for other people. And we're obviously thinking of the foundation when we do our donations every Christmas. So I think that's what we're going to be doing this year. Thank you to Grant and to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. You know, Grant was definitely that person, you know, to do those kinds of things. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is he would secretly contact people who are having trouble with their pets and maybe having some difficulty paying the veterinary bills, and he would secretly pay people's veterinary bills and things like that. He was a very, very caring, giving person. You know, I know it's cliche to say a lot of these things about people after they pass, but you know, in the entire time I knew Grant, you could talk about him the same way now as you would then. He was just always had a really big heart. He had a lot of empathy, a lot of patience and caring for people. And I think he really identified with people. The amount of empathy that he had for people and animals was really one of his best qualities.
All right, last question.
If someone wanted to continue his work with bringing Grogu to children's hospitals and building their own Grogu to do so, does that information exist somewhere, like the skinning, like the silicone for his skin and the hair that he used and the methods that he...
I do know that there are a lot of people online that are creating animatronic Grogus. You can reach out to me. I am talking to some people already. I'm on all social media. I'm very easy to find. If you send me one question or a very small communication, it's very easy for me to respond. If you send me a whole lengthy, long list, I sometimes have difficulty getting back to people, but I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I know that there are plans to take the Grogu that he made, because he made that with Lauren Markland, and she still has plans of taking that around to hospitals and stuff too, so his Grogu will be out there as well.
Yeah, and I wish.
But yeah, I would love to see an army of Grogus.
Yeah, and I wish I remembered the name of the person, because actually on the tribute panel in 2020 we had that fan whose plans he used on. So I know that it's in there, but I don't have
Yeah, I think it's readily available if you just do a Google search for that model, as well as different iterations on how to create an animatronic Grogu.
So you're still working a little bit on some of the Star Wars projects, is that right, Fawn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't talk about them?
Yeah.
Okay.
We did. I can't talk about. We did some stuff on season 2 of Mandalorian. We did the Ice Spider episode. We made a lot of the Ice Spider legs that are distributed about from the massacre of ice spiders. I found out who all my arachnophobic friends are. But yeah, we did reference models and full-size ice spiders. The joke is we're an ice spider ranch now.
Did you ever make it on screen during the movies, or?
Yeah. Every once in a while we got to do costume stuff. So I'm in the Coruscant celebration at the end of the Star Wars special editions. It was funny because they didn't have enough people to do the big pan across that crowd. So they did a pan across 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So I'm in that scene 3 times.
That's great.
Twice as a creature though, so that was a lot of fun. And I'm a Senate page in one of the prequels. I'm a little couple pixels running across the floor in the Senate chamber. Little things like that.
Any other fun Easter eggs we should look out for next time we watch for you or for Grant?
Oh gosh. I don't think you can see us. We're in there. Like, we know we're there. We have fun shooting all that stuff, but often we're part of a big crowd, or not recognizable, I would say.
Great.
Even Grant, when he was in C-3PO, he'd be front and center, but you wouldn't know it was him.
Yeah. Well, Fawn, I want to thank all of you for coming here today, and I'd love to make something like this an annual panel. I really want to thank you for sharing your photos and your stories. It's really clear, if we didn't know it already, that Grant was a great man and a great friend, and thank you so much for sharing a piece of that with us here today.
Thank you for having me.